The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Friday, May 20th, 2022. I'm Kev Laramie and I'll be joined by Duane Rollins, but please take a second and subscribe to our YouTube page and click on that notification bell to be made aware of every new uploaded show on our YouTube page. And if you're watching us and listening to us via podcast or live on Twitter, welcome back to Soccer Today. Of course, as always, I'm joined by Duane Rollins. And Duane, we will have the MLS weekend preview and of course the MLS, the CanPL weekend preview in a few minutes. But let's start the show by talking about the controversy of the Canada-Iran match that will be taking place in British Columbia, in Vancouver, at BC Place. First of all, this is a matchup, an exhibition match, a tune-up match for the Canadian national team. But because of Iran political aspect and, of course, because of terrorists and plane and the whole controversy surrounding this, not necessarily the game itself, but surrounding the choice of opponent should have been doing, and now that is taking place, the controversy surrounding this game. What can you tell us about the controversy, first of all, and what more can you tell us about this Canada-Iran exhibition match at BC Place?
Okay, so what specifically? Obviously, there are overall political issues that people have with the Iranian government, but specifically what a politician took issue with at the House of Commons yesterday was with the Flight 752, which, if you recall from 2020 in the early part of the pandemic, the passenger jet that was shot down by military means. A missile. It was shot down. It was mistaken as a military airplane and it was shot down. There were 52 Canadians on board that flight that died. So a lot of Canadians some Canadians are stepping up to say that this is a quote unquote slap in their face, that they are hosting this game, that they weren't included in the conversations around whether this game should have taken place. That Canada is aiding in Iran's sport washing. Sport washing, of course, a term that has come to raise over the past few years, meaning a country does good things in sports so that you ignore the bad things they do elsewhere. This is the position that's being put out there. I had some conversations yesterday when this was starting to flare up after it was announced in the House of Commons, and a lot of other people that weren't paying attention or don't pay attention to sports grabbed a hold of this story and ran with it. Often spinning it for their own means is how I'll say it. And everyone has the right to do that. This started to get some traction, and the CSA was getting some heat on that. I've been accused of being an apologist for the CSA here. Anyone who's covered me followed me over the 15 years that I've been talking to soccer knows that the fact that I'm a CSA apologist is hilarious. However, what I will say is this. What I was talking to them about was whether this was pragmatic or possible at all to postpone this game, move this game, not hold this game, all of these things, which is what is being called for right now. The answer to that is no, it's not. Now, we can have two conversations here. We're not going to have the geopolitical conversation about whether it was appropriate to have this. You can all hold your opinion on this. I tend to think maybe they could have picked a better opponent too, for sure, not just for the political reasons, but for sporting reasons. However, this was the opponent they picked. Once that schedule has been approved and scheduled, taking it off that schedule, particularly for a political reason like this, would suffer great consequences. Was stressed to me yesterday. Canada would maybe lose its games at the FIFA 2026 World Cup. One person told me, one very high-ranking person in the CSA told me, okay? So that's the issue here. You can't cancel this game. So I urge anyone that's frustrated by this to exercise your democratic right to protest outside the stadium, to make your voice heard, to speak up in the appropriate ways about this. This game's going to happen. It's an opportunity in my mind for people to voice their concerns over the hosting of this game, their concerns over the Flight 752 terrorist attack or military attack, however you want to frame that. All of that is an opportunity. If you just boycott, if you just take away, if you just isolate, as I've talked about many, many times on Five Rings in the past, I don't think that works. I don't think there's any example of that working outside of very extreme versions. Maybe South Africa and apartheid, the Russia situation right now, but those are not the same thing as one accidental shooting down of a plane. And I don't say that lightly. That is not to dismiss the life that was lost in that particular situation.
No, of course. And the reasoning behind the scheduling of this game is sporting related. And you can't dismiss the political aspect and the controversy aspect. But the reason why Iran was chosen, from what I was told, and also from analysis of that type of team versus what Morocco will be doing in Canada's group at Qatar, is very similar. Similar type of play. Even Algeria was talked about and rumored. Iran, it is, but it's because the playing style, the type of players, the ranking in the world are similar. And that is why Canada is going to play Iran. It's, on a sporting level, a similar opponent than Morocco will be at the World Cup.
Look, I think that it's worthwhile to have a conversation down the line when the summer slows down in the summer. You and I, and maybe a guest, have a conversation about sport washing. That's a worthwhile thing to have. For sure, there are aspects of any competition where you can find uncomfortable sort of connections to the country you're playing when you're talking about international sport. I mean, I don't want to be one of those people to do whataboutism here, but honestly, people could look at the residential school situation that's happened here and how the response to that has happened and say maybe we shouldn't be playing Canada until they address that, right? Like, that's not look down on others until we look at ourselves first. And this is a very serious and very long conversation that I would need to feel more comfortable if I had more time to prep for. But what I will say again is that, as Kevin said, this was scheduled based on a couple things. First off, they were willing to come and play on turf. That was a factor, right? And they do match the style that Canada will face in the World Cup, and that is something they're going to have to prep for. I don't know how one preps for Belgium, not to make light here. You play.
You don't.
Robot.
Yeah. You don't prepare for Belgium. You hold on for dear life. Like, how do you prepare for a roller coaster? You go on, you put your seatbelt, then you look up, you're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, how one preps for Kevin De Bruyne. I don't think that's possible.
That's what you do. You strap up. You're gonna have assists around you. He's gonna serve the ball on a silver platter for everybody, and you hold on for dear life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I'm going to say on this today. I wanted to address it on the show. You can't cancel the game. I think there's an irony that if you're watching the video version, you know that I'm wearing a Spice Girls t-shirt right now. And I understand there's a certain irony or certain sort of poignancy to the fact that the Spice Girls could not have existed, could not have come to play in Iran, that they would have been shot down, pushed down because of their human rights, their ability as women to be that would not have been allowed. And I don't agree with that on a personal level, but I also don't agree with sports boycotting because I don't think it works. So I'll acknowledge that. And let you go on, and now we can make fun of my Spice Girls t-shirt.
Well, Duane, before that, I want to say, for everybody watching, thank you very much. We all need somebody with a human touch, and thank you very much for this one. All right, let's talk about soccer. Let's preview Major League Soccer's weekend. It's going to be a fun time. Let's have a look at the schedule for week number 13 in Major League Soccer. A light Saturday but busy Sunday in MLS, as we have 4 games starting this Saturday. Columbus LAFC starts the weekend. Cincinnati, New England, DC United, Toronto, and Nashville, Atlanta. I am interested to see Cincinnati and how they'll play against New England. Cincinnati, one of the hottest teams in the league. Who would have thought? Also, they will be the next opponent of CF Montreal on May 28th. So let's keep an eye on this one. Luciano Acosta, top of the league for key passes in Major League Soccer, continuing to be a low-profile MVP candidate in my mind. Columbus LAFC, it's all about Carlos Vela. Will his contract be renewed? Extension? There's only a month left in his contract. Will he be back with LAFC after June 31st? And Columbus is not a playoff team at the moment. They are struggling, and can they recover in time? I doubt it, but we'll see what the old legs of Columbus will do later this weekend. Out of those 4 matchups, of course, DC United, Toronto, a battle of the bottom of the Eastern Conference. It's impossible to have 2 defeats at the same time. So will a team get points? Will Toronto be at the end of the standings in the East, or will they get maybe a victory against DC United?
Well, I don't know. It's the answer to that. I certainly wouldn't be putting any money on either of those teams to get a win. So perhaps a little tenor in the draw wouldn't be the dumbest bet you could possibly make there if you want to have a little gambling tip. But I think of those games on Saturday that interest me. The Cincinnati New England game is fascinating for the reasons that you sort of alluded to, that New England has struggled to get it going this year. And you can't blame the CCL in New England's case because they only played 2 games. I mean, they were involved for 4 weeks, but they only played 2 games. That really wasn't that taxing. And the fact that they haven't been able to continue on what they did last year, as we've talked a lot about this year, is one of the major stories of 2022 so far.
Yeah.
They're lucky, as I say every time, that no one in the East is pulling away, so no one is out of it. Even Toronto and DC, you mentioned, they're still in the race. If there is a win in that game, it potentially one of those teams could be in a playoff position, or at least one or 2 points off a playoff position at the end of the day. So this is a wide open thing. Nashville, Atlanta is interesting too. Atlanta is going to be interesting to watch the rest of the way. There's a bit of a rivalry there. We know, although it's going to get dulled in the years ahead because we're going to play each other rarely every other year at home. But
it's true, and because Nashville was in the East for a bit, now they're of course in the Western Conference. But Josef Martinez is back in training. Can Atlanta hold on for maybe 2 more weeks and then have their best lineup available again? Nashville is not doing wrong. They're not doing bad. They're doing pretty well. In Nashville, it's 23 games unbeaten, either at Nissan Stadium or now at Geodis Park. It'll be difficult for Atlanta, but Nashville, I will not bet against Nashville. You can maybe choose the draw or the win there for Nashville. Of course, multiple games on Sunday, including CF Montreal at home versus Real Salt Lake. CF Montreal is unbeaten at Stade Saputo, having a perfect 3-0 record so far this season. Real Salt Lake is not the Real Salt Lake of last year. The biggest heel of the playoffs last year. Remember David Ochoa, Duane, the goalkeeper, who was telling everybody to go you know where, to do you know what? Well, hasn't really been playing this year because of injuries. And Zach McMath also, the bane of a lot of goalkeepers. Remember Zach McMath, the forever backup everywhere. And of course, Zach McMath was battling Crépeau in Vancouver. Zach McMath was battling a lot of goalkeepers in Philly. Remember, he started his career in MLS in Philly, and then a certain Andre Blake appeared, and Zach McMath needed to be playing somewhere else. But he'll be in Montreal versus CF Montreal on Sunday.
I signed Zach McMath on my football manager team in 2011. So there you go. And he was, I think, a youth player then, and I thought I had a hot shot. The Nashville Atlanta game, I just want to go back to that for a half second. It will be 3-8 for Nashville, and that is in MLS. 3-8 is something that the teams struggle with. So keep an eye on that. But nonetheless, look, Montreal. That's a game they must win. They got to win that. If you feel that you are a top team in the East and you're playing at home against a team that I think is, was lucky to achieve what it did last year. Not lucky, but fortunate. They got some bounces. They got some fortune. You got to win that game. Period. If you think you're a good team.
No, I agree. And Montreal is a team that, when you look at the standings right now, you look at the amount of points, they are in the top part of the league. They are in the elite aspect of the league. Montreal is second in the entire Major League Soccer for the amount of assists they do, which is surprising to me. They have the best attack in the Eastern Conference. Montreal has the second best expected goal against, which is maybe a better indicator of their defense than the real amount of goals that they've conceded because of few defensive mistakes and a couple of bad blowouts. But when I look at Montreal at the standings, I am confident they can continue their run of form. And Salt Lake, they are a good team. They found an identity, us against the world and all that, but can they continue their run of form? They've been, I wouldn't say struggling. They got good results lately too. But can they continue? It's not like it's a team that has a depth at the attack level. They scored 12 goals this season, which is the 6th worst of the entire league. So that is to keep in mind for Montreal Salt Lake. And if I had to choose, Montreal will do well on Sunday. Let's not forget though, Kai Kamara in training today on Friday had a cast on his left hand. Will he be available? Who's going to be the striker? Will Kyoto start? Those are questions, and the answers will be given Sunday at 4 p.m.
It's interesting to me, hand injuries for non-keeper players. How long to keep? I think if it's a playoff game, you take the painkillers and you get out there, you might not want to do that in a regular season game. You'd be surprised how much you use your hands, little subtle things, and I think it helps with balancing that too. So I would. He's an older player. I wouldn't be forcing him out if he has an injury of any kind, even if it is upper body injury, to use the playoff hockey nomenclature.
So where are you injured? Well, somewhere above my belly button. Does that help you? No? Okay. Let's continue. Charlotte, Vancouver. Can Vancouver put 2 wins in a row? That's the question. No. Dwayne's short answer is no. No, but you know what they say, and that goes to your shirt. I would be surprised if Vancouver is able to make 2 become 1.
Tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Exactly. And what's the over under with the Spice Girls reference on this show? I don't know, but we're already 4 into it.
Yeah, if anyone wants to buy me more cheesy late '90s band T-shirts, we can have fun pun games all the time on this show.
Of course, why not? Maybe we'll start a different podcast called No Pun Intended. Then it's just puns. All right, New York City, Chicago. I'm interested in this one. Can Chicago do the trick to a second New York team in a row after giving the Red Bulls a 3-3 draw midweek? Can Chicago get a result at Yankee Stadium? My short answer is no. New York City FC will continue their run of form. And thank you, Tati Castellanos. He was my captain in fantasy this midweek, and that was worth it. Miami, New York, Duane. What is your... Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I think New York's the best team in the East. I think that what I've seen this year, I know Philadelphia's a solid
the Red
team.
Bull or New York City?
The NYCFC. The defending champions. I think their CCL really did slow them down, and they're starting to roll into it, unlike some other teams that were in the CCL. And I really do see them moving forward, starting to pull away with the conference. I don't want to disrespect Philly though, because they always overachieve. They always do a little bit more than the sum of their parts. So those 2 teams, and then the rest, and we'll see what New England can maybe do, because still on paper they look like they can continue.
All right, let's continue. And of course, Miami, New York, to me is interesting because the Red Bulls are a better team on the road than at home. They haven't won at Red Bull Arena yet, but they're the best team in the league on the road. And I was talking to colleagues and I was trying to figure that out. And I was wondering, and I was talking to some of our famous colleagues, and I was like, why the reasoning why New York is so good on the road and not at home? And of course, at home, they have what we call the onus of play, right? They feel they have the responsibility to keep the ball and make the play, and they don't like to play this way. New York, the Red Bulls are a high-pressing team. They love to press. John Tolkien and his mullet pressing all game long, creating turnovers, the ball, keeping the ball for the shortest amount of time possible, and getting a goal, getting a result, a chance. It's all about the shot-creating actions, the goal-creating actions off of turnovers, quickly in the final third. They are a very high-pressing team, which demands a lot out of the players, but they have the players and the energy and the youth to do so. But that does not create a game that is easy to do at home, because the other teams are like, well, just take the ball and you play, and then you cannot be effective in your high press, high turnover in the midfield type of game. So it's interesting to me that New York actually loves to play on the road, and also they don't draw the amount of fans that a lot of teams do. And even when it's home games, they never really have a hostile home advantage.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find the home advantage fascinating in all sports. And when I used to work like daily sports reporting, I often would ask this when I was just having a casual conversation with coaches, is why is there a home advantage? Explain it to me, because it doesn't make logical sense to me. And from a logical person, it doesn't, particularly in sports where everything's kind of the same, like hockey and basketball, and soccer to a certain extent. Like the field is the same. Baseball, you get it because there's different dimensions and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's hard to really pinpoint, and it really ultimately comes down to the human factor that particularly when we're talking about the sport we're talking about now. When you're a team that doesn't want the ball, that doesn't want to control or dictate the pace of the game, that wants to react to the pace of the game, to counterpunch, so to speak, it can be difficult, especially if the other team's trying to do the same thing. And I think that the home teams often, when the other team's trying to back up, if you're the home team, you just aren't going to. You're just eventually going to go say fine, because your fans are going to turn you on, and it doesn't matter how much the coach is in your head. They're just going to. And the Red Bulls might have a bit of that because they're not the most veteran team either, right? So they're not able to sort of keep that consistency. But when they're on the road, that might be part of it too. As a younger group, as a group that might get close because they're traveling together, they're playing FIFA in their rooms together. I'd say they're out in the town, but they're not. Like they're playing FIFA. Whatever. I'm just gonna stick with FIFA because I'm an old man. I'm gonna embarrass myself if I try and pick another video game.
No, they like play Fall Guys, or even Fall Guys. I think is a bit dated at this point. They play something. Yeah. I don't even know. I don't even know anymore, Duane.
What was that shooter that all the kids used to play a few years ago?
Fortnite, but that's like 4 years ago. Like you say Fortnite to kids now, they look at you and they'll be like, I don't know, Duane. I've given up. I've given up on keeping up. I can't keep up anymore. It's fine. I'm gonna have a kid soon. And they'll tell me what's cool eventually. I've given that responsibility up to my unborn child already, of telling me and making sure that I'm in the know of what the cool kids do, because I can't keep up. I've given up.
Yeah, well, that's like me in video games. It's like every so often I'll be in a store and I'll say I should buy a PS5. Not that you can find them, but you know what I mean.
It's like $1,000. Why would you even do that? Like, come
on. Then I think about my life, and I'd be like, I'd play that for like 4 days straight, and then it would sit there for 4 months before I played it again.
And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna come back. And you start an RPG game, and you like a role-playing game, and you're like, I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna start a new one. And when I have downtime, and you never go back to it. You like literally never go back to it. That's the story of my video game career.
Life career, yes. I wish I lived in the Twitch. No, even you've seen me play FIFA. I could have actually started a Twitch page as the worst FIFA player of all time. Yeah. That might have got some follows.
Maybe. Who wants to see though? Like very terrible.
Maybe. Well, it's just they could join to play me and they trash talk me or something. I'm a content creator. I've got something rolling in my head right now. Follow me. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be on Twitch soon, and we're gonna talk, folks. Sure. You can push the donation button over to the left there.
All right. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our Major League Soccer weekend preview, and we'll debut our Canadian Premier League preview for Week 7 in the CanPL. That and more after this short break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Kev Larme with Duane Rollins as we continue our preview of Week 13 in Major League Soccer. Week 12 was midweek, and Week 13 is this weekend. Let's continue to look at some of the great matchup that we will see this weekend in the Garber. You know, there's an expression in French, we say a circuit, as in like the circuit, and the name of the commissioner. I don't know why, but this is like a sports trope in French. So Commissioner Garber's circuit is a French expression of the day. The Circuit Garber. What are the games in the Circuit Garber? Duane will continue. And we've talked about Miami, New York, but Dallas, Minnesota. Dallas continuing to be one of the best teams in the league. Not worrying about replacing Ricardo Pepi. They did that with Paul Arriola. And Paul Arriola is in a difficult place personally, as his stepmother is, as his mother-in-law is going into a very difficult part of her illness. She has a terminal illness. And when he scored his last goal, he had a shirt underneath dedicated to her, and he will play with that energy. And I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to motivate Dallas. Not that Dallas needs motivation, and not that motivation is quantifiable, but Dallas has been good this year. They're continuing to be good, and I think they can even take the top of the Western Conference if a few results go their way this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, Dallas has had a good season so far. They're a young team that's sort of starting to get things to come together. I also want to just take a quick nod of that cap for MLS to not schedule 1 p.m. games on Sunday, because obviously the Premier League is wrapping up and a lot of people will be glued to that. And maybe they're starting to learn to think of the global calendar before they trump over it. But nonetheless, I don't know if that was the case or not, but I'm happy it is, so I can go watch the games and then come back and watch those games.
Yeah, because you might have a rooting interest on what happens.
Yeah, I might be singing
Sunday.
Oasis loudly and having group pictures in front of a bar that's 3.5 or not even 3.5 blocks. It's about 300 yards from me right now. Yes, I live beside Opera Bob's. I did not choose to live here. It happened anyway.
You didn't choose it, but were you like, well, I'm not gonna say no though.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, 2 or 3. Well, yeah, it was
Sure.
it was a tiebreaker. We'll say anyway.
Exactly. And
All right, it's Friday. We're all over the place. Go on.
I was just looking for a Spice Girl pun. I was just going through the names in my mind of like, all right, what are Spice Girl references and can I plug one? And I'm like, oh well, I haven't got one. Yeah, San Jose, Kansas City. That's an interesting matchup to me. Can San Jose continue? But Kansas City having won 7-2 against Portland last weekend, and they spanked Portland. Can they turn that around? But Kansas City, with their midweek craziness with Colorado, 4 red cards, they'll be missing a few players. So Kansas City and Colorado, to an extent, I wouldn't choose them in my parlay this weekend.
Yeah, again, if you look statistically speaking, teams that play 3 games in 8 days, so have the midweek game and then play in the weekend against teams that didn't play midweek, tend to not do well. So if you are looking at your parlays this weekend, you might want to look at what teams had buys midweek and get on them, because that will maybe give you a bit of a advantage there. But certainly those 2 teams in particular, because of the emotional sort of rush of that and the physicality of it, and players are getting kicked and players are getting suspended and players are getting pushed. So yeah, that's going to be a hard one to come back from. Look, this is the schedule coming forward. MLS is going to be about attrition in the next few months. We are entering that part of the year. You're going to have a lot of midweek games. They have to wrap this season up. They've taken 6 weeks off of it and condensed. They added, I think, 2 at the front and took about 4 off at the back. So
yeah,
something's got to give, right?
And it's going to be games galore going forward. Galaxy Houston, I don't know what to make of the Galaxy. Hot and cold, win and loss. Which one will it be? Houston, after surviving and winning 2-0 against Nashville last weekend, even though they were down to 10 men, can Houston do a good job on the road this time in LA? That's the question. Austin, Orlando. Austin, top of the West right now. Orlando, still very good in the Eastern Conference. I kind of like that matchup. And of course, to wrap up the weekend, Colorado, Seattle, and Portland, Philadelphia are your last 2 games on Sunday.
I'm going to make a point of watching Austin, because I think that a lot of us are still, I don't think I was ever disrespectful to Austin. I just didn't really think much about them at all, right? And for them to still be winning games, it was easy to fluff off the early results because they were against some pretty poor teams, or at least historically poor teams. But they continue to get there. They continue to be on top. They've done well in the Cup as well. I believe it's anyway. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so apologies if I got that wrong.
I believe so. Let me check.
Yeah. Nonetheless, I think I'm going to make a real point of watching that one. That might be the game that I'm most interested in watching overall this weekend, outside of, in MLS I'm talking about. It's intriguing. I want to figure out why they're doing well, what exactly it is they're doing well. We should do a deep dive on them when we have some time in the days ahead, which I think that's going to be in about 6 years. But nonetheless, we might have some downtime once hockey season ends here.
So Austin's not doing too good in the U.S. Open Cup, but that's okay. No, that's okay. We don't need to continue to talk about the U.S. Open Cup. Anyways, we'll continue to talk about it when it's more relevant to later down the road, when there's a ticket for the CCL in play. All right, let's continue for me, when I just look at the standings in MLS, Duane, wrapping up the weekend 13 already in MLS, I do feel there's something to be played for this weekend. If Montreal can get a result at home against Salt Lake, which, let's not forget, from Salt Lake to Montreal, that's almost a cross-country trek. Teams don't historically do well. Montreal has a lot of games. They haven't rotated a whole lot. That might come into play. But Philly has a tough game in Portland on Sunday. New York City played midweek. Can they play well? Montreal, with a result, could finish the weekend back on top of the Eastern Conference. That's what I'll focus on. Definitely the best Canadian team this year. Easily the best Canadian team this year. But the Canadian Championship starts also next week. So let's keep an eye on Montreal this weekend. And on the Western side, Duane, Yes, LAFC, it's easy to say keep an eye on them. They're playing against Columbus. But let's not forget Austin and Dallas. I think those three teams might be the top contender for the Supporters' Shield. I think because of those bad teams at the bottom of the West in San Jose, Kansas City, and Vancouver, I think Austin, LAFC, and Dallas are my three frontrunner for the Supporters' Shield long term, and we'll see if this weekend determines maybe a frontrunner in that race.
I would narrow that down to one of those three teams, and that'd be LAFC. I still, again, I'm going to watch Austin closely this weekend, but I still think that maybe there's something that's going to eventually cave there, because I don't think they can possibly have the same depth as the rest of the teams, and Dallas is a little too young for my mind here. Nashville's the sleeper there for the reasons we spoke of yesterday, because of their heavy home schedule down the stretch. In the East, I mean, it's possible that New York and Philly could kind of pull away from the East, and if that happens, then they might be in there for a shout as well in terms of the Shield. So that's good. You mentioned the Canadian Championship real quick. The 2020 Canadian Championship final has been scheduled June 2nd in Hamilton. So there you go. I bought my tickets this week, so I thought I'd remind people of that if you haven't done that.
Sure, the 2020. Yeah, you heard that right. The 2020.
You got the camera on here?
Yeah. Go ahead.
This baby here. This is a split scarf. I don't have many of them, but this one you have to have a split scarf because it's the cup final that happened 2 years after the competition. So there you go.
Better late than never, they say. That's a good quote. But speaking of the Canadian Championship and the Canadian Premier League, let's have a look at the Canadian Premier League schedule for week number 7 in the CCL. We have 4 games scheduled, 2 tonight. A late night in the Canadian Premier League tonight. But first of all, the Wanderers at home versus Forge, 6 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Atlantic. It will be a great game at home. To all my friends in the kitchen, I hope you enjoy tonight's Wanderers. Forge need points. Wanderers needs to keep up in the league too. Interesting matchup. Pacific at home with one of the hottest teams in the league over the last few weeks, York United. Can Pacific continue their domination in the league? Pacific has the double of points of everybody else on top of the league, and it's a runaway right now. Will anyone catch up or at least stay in range? That's the question. Cavalry Valor tomorrow afternoon, Saturday at 3:30 p.m. at Atco Field at Spruce Meadows. So that's the new full name of the stadium. It's the Atco Field at Spruce Meadows. And FC Edmonton at Clark Stadium at home versus Atletico Ottawa. Can Edmonton get their first win this season? I really hope so, because it's getting late.
I'm not convinced Edmonton's going to get more than 2 or 3 wins all season, and that's not meant as an attack on them. Everyone understands the problems are there. It's a nice little doubleheader tonight. If you are in a part of this country that's cooler, or it's a little bit dreary tonight, you got a long weekend in a lot of parts of the country this coming up, Victoria Day weekend, May 2-4, the May long weekend, whatever you call it. I like May 2-4, but for those that don't know that,
that's because there's 24 beers in a case of beers. So
yeah, and in Ontario they called May long weekend the May 2-4
and
weekend.
it's around May 24th, but May 24th will be next Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. It's a double entendre. Anyway, there's my French expression today.
Exactly. We were talking about the standings. Pacific on top, and then there's 4 teams with 8 points. So you have Pacific with 16, and Valor, Cavalry, Wanderers, and York, and Atletico. 5 teams with 8 points, and then Forge with 5, which they're not far away. Like 1 win and other results, they can be third in the league. But FC Edmonton, 0 win, 4 losses, and 3 draws with 3 points this year. Definitely the deception. No, they're not deceiving anybody, but it's a disappointment for sure. In French, it's the same word, okay? So that's my French expression of the day, the second one, I guess.
Yeah, well, and Kevin's been doing that one for the entire time that I'm there for. So I just roll with it now anyway. You taught me what circuit met earlier.
Sometimes a disappointment is a deception too, because sometimes it's just semantics is important.
You do have you get appearance now. Kevin used to say appearance in French all the time. We just roll with it. He speaks better English than I speak French. That's for certain. Anyway, it's a good little Ken week. I like today's doubleheader, and I'm debating whether I'm going to go watch the Cincinnati Reds play tonight or whether I'm going to stay home and watch a CanPL doubleheader. And either way, I'm going to win. I've never seen the Reds play. I've seen like 250 Major League Baseball games
Yeah.
in Montreal and Toronto, but I've never seen the Cincy Reds play because I
Well,
didn't go to a lot of Expo games. Anyway,
you haven't chose the right time to see a Cincinnati Reds play because they're like irrelevant right now. It's like, yeah, maybe in the '90s, but with Lenny, even then, it's still you
I'm
missed
very
the
excited.
window, but you know.
I'm very excited. On next week, the Cardinals are in town, the St. Louis
Oh,
Cardinals, which is a classic team that I've never seen play before. So I'm very excited by that. But anyway,
yeah,
that's my maybe my weekend. It's a long weekend here today. We'll talk to you about the Monday show coming up. Probably it'll happen, but we'll see.
we'll see. We'll have to
Guys,
discuss that.
yeah, I don't think, is it a holiday in Quebec?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know
So
what holidays are. I just know that they're days, and tomorrow's a day, and then there's another day after. There's
okay,
another
all
day
right.
after that.
Kevin doesn't work a normal schedule like some of us. Anyway.
No, don't have a regular job, which I love. It's very different, but it also comes with the territory. But on that note, hope you enjoy this week's show. You can follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramie. Hope you enjoy our weekend preview. We'll be back next week to review all those beautiful games and, of course, talk about the beautiful games from our unique Canadian perspective. Until then, you can find the podcast version of this show everywhere you find your favorite podcast. That would be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, and Google Podcasts, amongst all the other places. Also, if you want to advertise on this show, it is possible. You can contact me at sportspodcastnetwork@gmail.com for any other information. Also, or details, you can contact me. And if you want to support us financially, you can do so at patreon.com/sportspodcastnetwork. Over the next few weeks, Patreon is coming with brand new layout and design, and Duane and I are also working on our brand new approach to Patreon, which will be focused on the Canadian men's national team, Canadian women's national team, and getting ready for Qatar. Our road to Qatar will be for our Patreon listeners. So if you want to go ahead and jump the queue and go right away to our Patreon page, the subscribers that we have and will have first right now will be with us in the journey that will be our road to Qatar. But as always, until next time, for Duane Rollins, I am Kev Laramie. Have a great day, a great soccer, and a great weekend.